Hi, welcome back to GCon 360. And for those of you just joining us, welcome to GCon 360. So our presenter today is Chris Whittle, and he'll be talking to you guys a bit of a spooky presentation called Horror Stories, How to Prevent Them. So this will be about those things that you wish wouldn't happen on your Google Apps domain, but sometimes inevitably will, where users may go rogue or do things that could be detrimental to the domain, such as deleting documents or sending emails that you do not want sent out and things like that. So Chris is a bit of a ghost hunter, and we'll talk to you guys about how to prevent these tragedies. But before we get started, I just want to go over a few things. There's the Q&A app. So if you guys go up to the top right corner of your Hangout on Air, you will see a little grid. It's got a 3x3 square. And if you click into that, there'll be the Showcase app, which will show you some of the things that you can win. If you click into the virtual gift bag, the virtual giveaway bag, and also it will provide a link to the next session. At the end of this session, I'll also put a form up there that you guys will need to fill out if you want to win some of the giveaways. We're giving away a swag box and some t-shirts and things like that during this presentation. And for the Q&A app, if you ask questions in that, we'll make sure to answer your questions at the end, and Chris will be happy to field them. So without further ado, I'll turn it over to Chris now. Chris, you're on.
Yep, I'm on. Sorry. Hey, I'm Chris Whittle. Like you said, I'm a director of technology at Collective Bias. We're a shopper marketing company. I'm going to flip over here and start my presentation because you guys, that's what you want to see anyways. So, all right. So I've got my. Basically, we want to talk about some of the horror stories that happen. Why me, I guess, is we're working for a small startup company that's turned not startup anymore called Collective Bias. We specialize in shopper marketing. We've had crazy growth. I was hire number 12 or 13, depending on who you ask. I like to say it's 13 because I think it's cooler. But about 4 years ago, and now we're at 135 plus users. What makes that interesting about us is that we're a purely remote company that have offices, which is different than most companies. Most companies were built to have offices and then added remote people. Most of the people that work here, the habit that we try to get everybody into is basically they take their laptop home with them every day. If something happened, if the building burned down or they had to leave for Chicago the next day, it wouldn't matter. Their situation stays the same. Their environment is the same. We're also different. We don't have a lot of infrastructure. Actually, we have very little. We have we've never had an Active Directory environment. Hope to never have one. I have one Windows laptop that's running in a closet somewhere that I dislike tremendously. Everything else we have is OS X or Linux. So why am I teaching the class? Probably because they couldn't get somebody better, for one. But also, we thrive in the cloud space. We are completely central, Google-centric. And from being a startup, we have quite a bit of horror stories that have sort of chiseled us into what we are now. So one thing I want to tell you guys, big disclaimer, some of the concepts that we're talking about, I don't always completely practice what I preach yet. Not because we're not going to. A lot of it's we're still relatively young. This company has only had an IT department, which is me and one guy, for about a year and a half. I've been with the company for longer than that, but which is in the year and a half, we've just now started to focus on this part of our company. So that gives you a little bit of idea why I'm here. So let's just get started. Basically, we want to talk about, being prepared to start off of. So I'm just going to tell you guys, I sort of went with a Walking Dead concept here just because I'm a fan. And I sort of made this really random connection between employees that leave, calling them walkers, as well as the graphics novels and shows. So just so you guys have an idea why I keep talking about walkers, and there's Walking Dead quotes at the bottom of most of these. But, these are the people, what's a walker? These are the people that leave the company. Either by choice or by not their choice. So that's the idea. If you keep hearing me talking about it, who is in your group. So if you guys have ever watched the show, there's always this group, this family that has to fight. And in this situation, we're the same way. We need to have, it's not just IT or, you've got HR involved, you've got operations, you've got IT, and you've got employees manager. And you probably have more than this. This is just our size of company. So you want to make sure you know who these people are dealing with this, and what each person or each group or persons are supposed to be doing in a situation when you have somebody leave. Yeah, these people are supposed to have your back. You've got to have a reliable connection with them, because when these things, when things go down, you really have not a lot of time to make decisions depending on how it goes down. So what kind of gear do you need? Company policies is what I've got up here first. This is actually an area of growth that we've been experiencing just in the last couple months. Because we're a startup, we've had this hasn't been a focus for us. Being a startup, it focuses on making money, keeping the doors open, hopefully not having to let people go. That as we get bigger and bigger, this became more of an issue. So one of the big ones we've really pushed out lately has been the acceptable use policy. And this sort of does two things. It protects us as a company because it can tell the user what they have to expect from what's being monitored, what's not being monitored. But it also talks about, things like not using your company email for personal things. We actually had 2 or 3 problems with this. My very first one was awesome. A guy had just got let go. He had used everything from Facebook to LinkedIn to oh my gosh, to just everything in his personal life. He had used his company email for that. And from our, us being nice people, we could have just cut him off and said, sorry. But I spent an hour and a half with a guy that was extremely emotional, distraught, trying to separate his company persona and his personal persona so the guy could go home and still have his Facebook account and LinkedIn account and things like that. So these policies are very useful for that kind of situation to hopefully keep people from making decisions on that. But it's still like 2 years later, we still have fight with this problem, people using that. What other policies do you need? This really depends on your culture and leadership. We partner up with a company that's like a sister company. We share a investor with, and they're sort of like a big brother to us to a certain point, and we learn from them and they learn from us because they're trying to get towards us and we're trying to get towards them to a certain extent. And they have lots of policies, and we've got 6 or 7. And that's, we've tried to combine some. And as we get bigger and situations happen, these horror stories happen, we've had to grow with those and take parts that were involved in another policy and break them out to their own and spend their time. But this just depends on what's a good fit for you guys. So processes, I'm not one of the biggest fans of processes, but you know what, in the last year, processes have saved my bacon more time than I can count, and we are building on that even more. This sort of takes the guesswork out of what is what happens when somebody leaves. If somebody is gone, are they expected? Are they unexpected? You have policies that deal with both those situations. Now, they're not all like self-encompassing, like they're not just like the perfect thing. They need to be like a living document that will allow you to make changes or even make decisions on the fly. But it gives you that structure that's needed when you don't really have a lot of time. And then whatever decisions that are, if anything happens in that situation that possibly could happen in the future, you make changes to your process and you come back, and then hopefully it's a better process after that. So also, this part's a little bit more, it's not exact science. We want to keep an eye out for walkers. You always want to be proactive. Everything you try to do, you want to be pretty proactive on things. But you can't always be, being reactive just doesn't work all the time. Being proactive in this situation doesn't work all the time either, because it's a very it's not a science. It's just trying to figure out, what we've done is we've tried to create good relationships with people, with managers and things like that. So we have an idea, hopefully when somebody's not having a good day. We're a smaller company still, so we can still see somebody down by the coffee pot and, see what's going on and know a little bit about their lives. But that doesn't get you very far. That's when we start having to use some tools to be able to, data mine or, watch for these walkers. So, so we're going to get into these tools first off. So one of the tools we use, and this is sort of it's not completely this. You can use this for a lot of different things, but one of the horror stories has happened in the past, actually at another company, it was before I came here. When somebody left, they tried to send out one of those, basically, screw you guys, I'm out of here emails. And they, tried to take out, try to air a lot of dirty laundry. Might have been true, might have not been. But it was their way of just sort of, jabbing it to the man before they left. And it can be damaging to morale. It can also be damaging to, departments, depending on what that dirty laundry is. So what they did, and we haven't gotten to this point yet, but what the company I was with did at that time is they had a moderation set up so that when you go to send an email to a big group of people, be it the whole company, be it a whole department, that's up to you. But whatever that is, you set that group up to moderate. And Google tool, the Google Groups has a great option there where you can moderate certain members, like, moderate just everybody that tries to message it or people that aren't members. So they've got a pretty nice setting there. This also could be useful, by doing this also fixes things. We had a person, the same company, that somebody had emailed out, and this was a smaller group that wasn't moderated at the time, and I think it was afterwards. But somebody had sent an email out about a local sports team, and it was a rival. And the person thought he was responding the whole reply versus reply all. Well, he replied all a very offensive picture of the opposing team of that meetup for that week, and he didn't lose his job, but I don't think he had a really good day for at least a week. So this is also a way to try to keep people from hurting themselves as well. So the next one I've got here is Google Drive Audit. Once again, this isn't something we're extremely well versed in. We just became Google Drive Unlimited clients probably about it's been about 6 months, I guess, maybe a little longer. And this is one of the big selling tools at the time, and even still, I feel like it's a little bit limited. We like to use, it could be augmented with some of the BETTERCLOUD drive policies, which I'm going to talk about in a minute. But for now, just straight out by itself, it's only available to Drive Unlimited customers. You can create alerts on multiple criterias, which is pretty nice. But the one thing that I think it's missing is there's no way to see when someone downloads documents. And why I care about that is when I worked for another company, we had someone leave the company, and we know for a fact that she downloaded a bunch of files the night before she departed. And I would, that would be something nice that we could see and be able to maybe use as a legal chip, bargaining chip, if someone went to a competitor, and we could say, well, they downloaded every one of our client files or our, a certain amount of files before they left, which could cause them a lot of problems. The downside is I don't have a good way of doing that right now with using Google Drive and things, and this is where it really should fill in, I think. So maybe somebody will message me later after this and say, oh, here's how you do it, and I'll be going, oh, great, and I'll adjust the slide later. Google Vault. This is another one we use. We use this for a couple things. Once again, because we're Google Unlimited clients, we get Google Vault. Before we were Unlimited, we actually had Google Vault by itself because of a few of these horror stories. We had some people that were involved in some different things, and we were able to use this to be able to prove that. But for this part, it's extremely powerful query language. You do have to run it manually. That is sort of a downside to me. You can see on in the slide, I put the terms of quit, leaving, fed up, tired. The idea would be is maybe I could set this up with certain verbiage that might, trigger if somebody has said these words. Now, you're going to get a bunch of false positives. So it doesn't mean that this is perfect. You have to play around with this quite a bit to make it work. But resign, resignation, things like that would show up in here. It'd be really nice if this actually, emailed me with that information, but currently it does not. And maybe that's something that, some of the other companies have that I don't currently yet, but that's the only thing I have a downside with this one, really. And right now, as of like last week, I think was the email I got, it now includes Hangouts, which is good because a lot of our communication is done through instant messaging, and because we're Google centric, Hangouts is one of our big ones. And so making sure that that's captured now is a big thing for us, because I actually feel sort of sheepish. I thought it was already caught. So, but now it is, so good. The next one is BetterCloud Drive policies. This is really cool. Once again, it's a similar concept. It's, you're running against, documents this time. The other one's via email, but right now you're running against documents and be able to say, look for certain keywords. You can also look for you could get crazy with regex if you want to. I actually set this one up today. It was the first time that we had done it. We've used Drive policies for other things, but this is the first time I tried using it in this sort of situation because I wanted to see how well it worked, and it works great. Unfortunately, depending on your criteria, you will get a lot of false positives. And I got probably 40 messages from this through our whole document system. And, which isn't too bad, not as bad as I thought it would, but of course, none of them had anything to do with it. And most people aren't dumb enough to write their resignation letter in Google Docs of the company they're resigning from. But you know what? Stranger things have happened here. So I wouldn't go that far. So you can create policies from keywords, content, share settings. Keywords and content are probably the two pieces that you're really the most interested in. And actually, that is the same thing. But from content, you can do keywords. You can do some other options as well, regex. So it can be pretty powerful. Once again, it's not a science. It's going to take some time, and you're just going to have to sort of play with the settings to make it work the way you want. Let's see here. Our next one is BetterCloud monitoring. So this one we've used. It's been a while since we've used it. Earlier, I talked about, just a few minutes ago, I talked about a situation we had some employees that were involved in some shady stuff, and we actually used this as well to set up monitoring for those people, because we knew about it. We sort of had known about it ahead of time from some other sources that were outside of this, and so we were able to set up a monitors for each of the employees and basically dump them into a third temporary email in Google that we could then have people could go in and monitor. The difference between this one is when you're using it, you've either got to suspect something ahead of time, like you're expecting them to, expecting someone to be, like go into some other business, or just something else sort of has to trigger it, unless you just got a lot of free time on your hands and you want to hang out and watch people's emails all the time, which goes against most people's policies, by the way. So that's the only downside to this one that I see. So we're talking about what do we do before they turn. What I'm sort of getting to now is what do we do when they turn. Unfortunately, it's a business. People are going to leave on their own volition or by other means. So it's going to happen. Unfortunately, it's even going to happen to you and I. Probably after this presentation, they'll probably let me go. But we've got, it's going to happen. So we need to be prepared for it. And we talked about what we could do to be prepared. Now we're going to get into, what happens. So we got to know our walker. If it's coming, it's easier. We've got processes in place. We sort of want to know, what their backstory is. If I get an email, we have an email that goes out right now that says, so-and-so is departing. we can determine, why are they departing. And then, a lot of times we'll go to their manager and say, okay, what's the story? Are they going to a competitor? Which is usually not a question, because if it was a competitor, that's instantaneous. That usually means they're going to be gone within the day, within the hour probably, versus, going to a non-competitor. But we try to get the situation down. We try to find out, why are they leaving us? Is it, maybe they're just not happy and they haven't been happy for a while, and they found this brand new job that's just the bee's knees and they're excited about it. So, they're not people that we have to worry about. Probably there's a lower expectation that they're going to just take documents or client information or anything like that. We're not. Are they leaving because somebody did something? They feel like they've been jilted, or maybe they have. They feel like something's wrong. Something just isn't the way they want it. They're very angry about it. That could determine that we need to start reeling them back, even though they've got 2 or 3 days less with us, or a week or 2 with us. Maybe we decide to let them go a little earlier. Maybe we start dialing back their access to where, they can't have access to Salesforce or Insight or whatever CRM you're using outside. Or maybe we, just start taking them out of certain email groups, things like that. Those are concepts we sort of have to figure out. Hopefully you've got that all put into your process. So good questions to ask. Are they going to a competitor? Like I said, are we leaving due to a problem with another employee? Is there any research that needs to be done prior to them leaving? What that means is, okay, if they're leaving on a bad note, or they're leaving, there's sort of like some gray area around it, that they might not say they're going to a competitor, but their manager thinks they might be in the future. Do we need to go research and look at using these tools before? Maybe go through and sort of scour their email and look for anything that could be a problem in the future. Did they resign, quit, or get terminated? Not sure why I put resign and quit, because it's basically the same thing. And did they give us ample notice? If they come in and say, hey, I'm going to be out in 2 days, it's over, that could be a red flag to something else. So we have to make decisions on, like I said, going back and researching to see, they got a job at a competitor. They're not telling us about it. We actually have, there's legal binding to keep them from doing so. Maybe that's before we do anything, we reiterate that that's the case. So we know we know your walker now. What? Oh crap! We got a walker that just left. He just walked out of the building or didn't show up today. We had no notice about it. This is where your process is really important, because you might not have any time left. You might have just a few minutes to get their access knocked down to nothing, block them out of anything that could be a thing. We need to go back and look at maybe what they have done in the limits that we can. This could be easy as just using the same process you had before, but everything's under a time crunch. But it could be that you need to put something different. It just really depends on who the person is and why they're leaving. So want to talk about the different tools that we use during that part of it. We use the BETTERCLOUD deprovision checklist. It's a pretty good product. I don't know if you guys are familiar with BETTERCLOUD, but basically it sits on top of Google Admin and connects all the dots that Google Admin has the ability to do, but just doesn't do for some reason. But one of the coolest things we have used is the deprovision checklist. And this helps us go through, some of the stuff doesn't apply, but some of it does. And you could go through and immediately mark them as suspended. So that should take away their access, if they're using their email or whatever on their mobile device, and any other product there is there that's connected to their Gmail account should within seconds be null. Then you can go through and actually take them out of email groups, because there's nothing worse than after somebody quits, if their manager has to go look through their email and still sees all the emails that they were getting on a regular basis still there, and have to go through it all. You could go, it takes away access to certain Google apps, or some of the different apps they're connected with their email account. it's a really nice product. Once you get done with it, you can set it as a reminder to say, hey, I'm going to deprovision these guys and or finish deleting them in a couple weeks, month, 90 days, whatever works for you guys. That's up to you. That's really depends what you want to. It does have custom steps to bring in other processes, which leads me into my next step. So we are currently working with a third-party product that will not be named. That is a competitor to one of the ones that are here. But basically, what this does is the deprovisioning checklist is great if you're an admin. If you're a Google admin, it's awesome. But when you're, back to your teams that you bring into your group, you've got HR, you've got operations, you've got a manager, things like that they're not going to be in that admin tool. They don't have access to that, and you don't want them to have access to that. So what we're working towards, and this is what we're working towards right now, we've just purchased in the last few months, and we're about to start moving it into this week, is custom workflow. And basically we found a web-based workflow product that allows us to connect, create these workflows. So when somebody is deprovisioned, it can be started right then and email out the groups with the tasks that they're supposed to have done, with notification back to the other people when they're done, so that maybe the next step has to kick off, or maybe they just need the notification. And that gives you some kind of view into how quickly things were done, and maybe discussion points for afterwards if they need to go faster. There's a few options out there. Like I said, Fujitsu Run My Process is one of the ones here at GCon, and they're actually a fine product. We looked at them when we were looking at ours, and there was some reason why we didn't do it. I don't remember what it is off the top of my head, but they're a great product for that. But it gets you a way to sort of combine all the different teams together into this process. Let's see here. The other one is single sign-on. So this is a little bit of a gray area. Some people hate single sign-on, and some people love single sign-on. There's companies that won't do single sign-on because it's a bottleneck, or for the possibility of security. If something is, if somebody was able to get that access, they have access to everything. We actually enjoy it. We like it a lot right now. Give me a year and we might have an incident or two, and I might change my mind. But one of the nice things about single sign-on is that when someone leaves, I can turn off anything that uses that product access immediately. We use one login. You could use Okta, Centrify, LastPass is actually some companies use. What I suggest when you use those products, if the product uses SAML, great, that's awesome. You can connect the dots. There's nothing that can be lost there. If you use a form-based product, make sure that the password is not set to anything that the user actually knows, so that if they do leave, all you have to do is reset the password or take away their access from the tool if it has that capabilities, where they never see the password, they never even deal with it. So it's a good option to have, because it speeds it up. Right now, when a user leaves, I can delete their user. It'll disable them in Google, or suspend them in Google. It will suspend them in Salesforce and a few other products, so they don't have access. And then it takes away any of the products that they were using through the toolbar, which was the form-based stuff. Getting close to the end here. The end is never the end, or end is not the end. So when a person leaves, that is definitely that's not your finish point. A lot of people feel like it is, because you get people are gone. They're not an issue then. Problem is that we have found that out that's not the case. There are potential, when people leave, especially when they leave, you don't always know the full story. We've had some people leave that have come back and actually had lawsuits against, they thought that they were owed more commission from a sales department, or there was a reason why they left that they didn't communicate to anybody until after the fact, and felt like that they needed to. And so those things happen, and you really need document. You need to have something to be able to come back and hopefully show to say, hey, this did or didn't happen. And that's where, the end is never the end. So you've got your short term, and we'll get into the long term in a second. Short term, when people leave right now with us, we delegate their manager the email address. And there's a couple ways you could do that. You could either just give them the password. You could, give their reset their password, unsuspend them. Usually about a day or so after they've been suspended, we unsuspend them and reset their password to something that's not their one before. And then we could give that password to the manager. It's a little clunky because now they have to log in, and it messes with all their calendars and everything else, and any integration with Chrome or something. What the better way that we like to use is we use Google Delegation, and through the Google Admin tool, it's I think, I don't even know if you can get to it right now. I know you couldn't in the past. So now, we use BetterCloud for that, where we can actually connect a manager to their account where they can go into them without having to log in. So they don't get notified of emails or anything like that, but they can go in and look through their email, look for anything they need. Whatever you do here, you want to have a plan for when this is to stop. Is it 2 weeks, 30 days, 90 days, 120 days? It all depends. The other part that I left off of here is, I'll actually get to the long term. That's actually part of it. So, but you need to have a stopping point, and that deprovisioning checklist earlier with the with BetterCloud, they give you that capabilities to set a time to say that's when this person is. We're going to get this guy out of our system. So long term, basically with the long term, depending on your company and what their policies are, most companies want to keep email transactions between from a user for a few years, if not longer, depending on what they were doing and what certain pieces of their policy are. Once again, that's up to your company. I think we do 3 years. Right now, I've got some that are older than 3 years, but we're working towards that. But what we do is we always archive. So when we're done, when a user gets finished, we don't delete them straight away. We make sure, using the provision checklist, we transfer documents, transfer any meeting or calendars they own, remove all apps that they might have access to, clean up their account, make sure they have Google Sites, which if anybody uses Google Sites, but we still transfer them just in case. Try to get them all set up so that clean that user out, and then we archive their email to so that we can store it. There's a couple different products out there that will do that for you. We use Google Vault. Not everybody does, but that's what we use. We basically do a search for their user from the beginning of time, and then archive it off into an inbox format and put it up in Google Drive in an HR folder that no one has access to. And that's how we keep ours going forward. And if we ever have to reconstitute it, most of the companies that the law offices that we have dealt with in the past with this, they'll take that inbox format and they know what to do with it. If you are, Google Vault also has a separate option, and I don't remember the pricing on it, but for a smaller price, you can turn a regular user into a Google Vault archive user, which will keep them in Google Vault, allowing you to use their e-discovery tool, which is a lot nicer than what we are, which we're using Thunderbird or Outlook or something to reconstitute their inbox format. But the e-discovery tool gives you more search capabilities and things like that. That's another option that we haven't used, just because most of the time when we've had any issues with this, we've given that document to someone else to let them deal with it, or that archive. The other option is spanning backup. They have a full service backup where they sort of use outside of Google, and it's from what I understand, it's a fine product, but just not something we've had to use yet. And there are several others out there. I don't have time, really don't want to go through and talk about, but there's a lot of them out there. But it's a pretty important thing that you do this, because I promise you, you are going to get bit sometime by somebody that's disgruntled, and they want to come back and try to hurt your company. And maybe it's for a completely real reason, maybe it's not. But you need to have that information ahead of time so that you can be prepared for that. Let's see, what else do I have here? How long? Once again, that depends on how long you're going to. If you want 3 days or 3 weeks, 3 months, year, 7 years, just depends on what your company policy is. And that's pretty much my spiel for the day. So I guess we'll do some questions through the QA app.
Hey, just before we jump into questions, just a few quick things. So what I'm going to be putting live right now in the Showcase app is a form that you guys can fill out if you want to win any of the cool swag, and it will also get you a copy of Chris's presentation in all of its Walking Dead glory. So be sure to fill that out, and you should see that in the Showcase app. And I just want to give a quick thanks to those that made this presentation possible. So hold on one second. So a special thank you to AODocs, Smartsheet, Spanning by EMC, Switch.co, Virtru, and everyone else who has helped to make GCon 360 what it is this year. And now back to Q&A. So let's see what questions. We don't have time for a whole bunch of questions because this is ending at 4:45 and we're nearing that time. So here's one from Grant. So for those who are a little late joining and maybe didn't catch this at the beginning, Chris, could you explain again what a walker is?
Yeah, it's a reference to Walking Dead. Basically, I'm sort of connecting the dots between a person that leaves the company as a walker. I don't know why I decided to riff on that, but I had fun with it. So basically, someone who leaves the company either on their own volition or not.
All right. And also, a lot of people seemed interested in seeing a sample acceptable use policy. Do you have like maybe a basic stock acceptable use policy we could add into the presentation before we send it out?
I'd have to look. I don't know if the one we're currently under construction on one of our newest one. I'll have to ask the HR group if we're allowed to share that one out or not. But I know for sure there's hundreds of them out there online, and a lot of it is you don't want to get too bogged down on someone else's version of that. What's best is just to grab them and sort of take the pieces that affect your company at the time, because if not, you're going to have this document that doesn't really work with your company or is too stringent or not stringent enough, depending on who the company you borrowed it from is. But I would highly suggest looking and finding several of them and just piecing it together the way you want. But I will see if I can find that option. So.
All right, that's some good advice. And then most of the other people in here seem to be just big fans of the Walking Dead theme and the My Little Pony placement in the background.
Yes, that's Sparkles. He was from one of our vendors. I was telling them, asking for a lot of stuff, and at the end, after like 6 different requests, I said, you know what? And I want a pony, and I want a pony named Sparkles. And about 2 days later, I get an Amazon package from that company with Sparkles, the pony, that now resides on my wall for everything.
All right, awesome. So if you guys have any other questions, you guys can ask them on the event page, and I'll be sure to follow up, and Chris will jump in there as well, I'm sure, and answer whatever you guys are wondering. But that's all for today, and make sure to tune into our next session. It's on the provisioning and deprovisioning process with Will O'Leary. So that's starting in about 20 minutes, so that should be good. Thanks again, Chris. This was great.
Thank you for having me. Everybody have a good day.
All right. Bye, everyone.